We need to put signs up honoring us,
Right.
because there are a lot of signs honoring enslavers,
Yes. That's right.
like Woodward,
Macomb.
John R.,
Yeah.
an enslaver.
Yeah.
Jefferson.
Has a low down enslaver who wrote all men are created equal, but no, he didn't believe that. He didn't believe that. Thought he owned Africans who were enslaved. So I think it's part of who you are. You ought to leave something better than you found it.
Oh, for sure.
So I wanted to leave some street names better than they were when I arrived. And why not do it? And I had to, you shouldn't have to argue and wrestle over that.
Right.
But it was not, that some people, even after the signs got put up, had to deal with some council people who followed that. We just don't understand why. One of those who said he didn't understand why he's sitting in somebody's incarceration right now. Don't mess with God. Don't mess with God. Yeah, Charles Pugh. So he just don't know. They never heard of Charles. He didn't never heard of Kwame Otter. Why is Harold McKinney's name? I said, listen, if I fought to put it up there, that ought to be good enough for you. Do some history.
Right.
Do some history.
Do some history.
That we ought not to blame each other except for such sins as we are personally guilty of. Now, you are asking everybody in this room to feel a perpetual sense of guilt for certain things that were committed, perhaps not even, in this case, by their own great-great-grandparents.
Oh, my goodness.
Now,
Mr. Buckley, that's so unrealistic. I'm talking about a present sense of
all right, well,
guilt.
all right,
They must have a present consciousness of what they're doing presently to black people.
all right.
Now, and the fact is
Well,
that they're
then don't
benefiting.
discuss slavery, then.
They're benefiting from the institution that was created on the backs of slavery.
How do you know?
Because
Document that.
All right, let's take your slaver. He would take his ship, $35,000 that he paid for it.
You're reaching back into history. I thought you were talking about the existing situation.
Where did your foundation come from? How are you going to take your financial foundation, your industrial foundation, which was built on my back?
The Republic of New Africa emerged out of a relationship, so to speak, between Obadele brothers, or otherwise known as the Henry brothers, and their relationship to Malcolm X, who was a great influence. Imari Obadele, being a founding member of the Republic of New Africa, he took the mantle of reparations from Queen Mother Moore, who insisted that it be included as part of the platform of Republic of New Africa, and they demanded $400 million and 5 states in what is known as historic Black Belt South. The 5 states being South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Mississippi, and Louisiana.
We saw her. I saw her as a mentor. Having the initial connections to those organizations, people like Imari Obadele and Chokwe Lumumba and many other persons that were instrumental in co-founding, the reparations movement, or in COBRA, and also the Republic of New Africa. So, she, to me, laid that foundation, had been involved in many other areas in the city that were supportive of the reparation movement.
The Republic of New Africa was, getting reparations without having the land base, it wouldn't mean much. So we wanted both. We wanted our 40 acres and our mule. Oh yes, they were a force to be reckoned with. That's the best I can say when it came to reparations. JoAnn helped organize in COBRA here in Detroit, the local chapter of COBRA.
JoAnn Watson, civil rights activist to be sure, at one point the executive director of the Detroit branch NAACP. But what's important to this conversation is she was also an early member of NCOBRA, the national organization that has fought continually for reparations for African American people. So passionate, and so much so that when Detroit voters approved a reparations study process a couple of years ago, she was named, JoAnn Watson was named to that task force.
My friend and sister in the struggle, we were contemporaries. We worked actively in different organizations most of the time, but we worked for the same causes, uplifting our people. She was like tunnel vision dogged, all right, on efforts to improve the quality of life for African Americans. And she was the leading council person for removing the question, have you been convicted of a felony, from applications for employment with the city of Detroit and any business that wanted to contract with the city of Detroit. So she was about removing barriers. She was about recognizing that Jim Crow was alive and well. And she worked tirelessly to push back, tear down, and rebuild.
My. Whatever she took on, she did with her whole being, with her whole self, with her whole energy. You know, there was no one phase of her life. She was a reverend, she was a doctor, she was an educator, she was a revolutionary, she was a Pan-Africanist, she was, oh man, she was all of that and more.
Mother Watson it was just an awesome experience to work directly with Mother Watson. I mean, she wore so many hats. Okay, and one of the things that very dear to me is the fact that when she was elected in the special election to the city council, she was very instrumental in a couple of legislations that were very helpful to the residents of the city of Detroit.
She asked me to be a driver and bodyguard. So that's what she hired me for. When I got to the office, there were a couple of things that happened with people she hired, including an illness, that eventually took who was one of her campaign managers, Cynthia.
Ordinance that would require prospective contractors with the city of Detroit to disclose that information was revolutionary.
Okay, because being a legislator, for people to understand this, is you need to definitely be, it's going to be pure politics equipped, meaning that you're going to have allies that want, they have their work that they want to pass through, you have your work that you need to pass through. You need to keep the integrity that people that you support, they're going to keep the integrity for whatever their interests are. I'm just speaking more so from this lens. And you need to have, you need to understand it's not an executive position, and you're winning.
Major lawyers, Willie Gary, Johnny Cochran, and a number of other lawyers are now getting involved in trying to come up with a case to bring reparations, and they're going to hit a number of areas. The federal government eventually is the big target, but corporations that still exist right now, and that existed at the time that these lawyers are beginning to discuss it. There are corporations that were involved in slavery, and a lawyer named Deidre Farmer Pellman had begun lawsuits against a number of those companies to force them to divulge their involvement in slavery. And so in Chicago, Alderwoman Dorothy Tillman will push forth an ordinance in Chicago that basically states that businesses have any vending and contracts with the city of Chicago have to reveal their involvement in slavery. That would make them open now for the legal community that was getting involved in suing these companies and potentially going to sue them about reparations. But once they divulge, once that information comes out, now they can be targeted by people like Willie Geary, Johnny Cochran, DeAndre Farmer Pellman, and other attorneys who were involved in this case. Charles Ogletree. They were the lead attorneys who were attempting to go after private corporations about their involvement in slavery. And so Dorothy Tillman does it in Chicago, and Councilwoman JoAnn Watson does it here in the city of Detroit.